Welcome back to the Moms Like Me podcast, powered by Support Now. You are in for a treat today. This is one of these episodes that really lights me up personally because not only do I get to talk to an incredible mom, but I also get to talk to an incredible entrepreneur. And this entrepreneur shares so much of the values and vision of what we're building here at Support Now. And so whenever I have the opportunity to interview like-minded moms with like-minded businesses, it really is such a treat. So Nicole Connell, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Jordan. I'm so excited.
So Nicole, like I mentioned before, you're a mom, you are a CEO and founder of an incredible company. And I'd love for you to introduce what you're doing and why you're doing it.
So I founded Maire. You pronounce it just like you would the horse, Maire. It's French for mother. And I founded it about a year ago. And it came from a very personal story, my story. And essentially, it is virtual maternal health care from trying to conceive, women trying to get pregnant, all the way through motherhood. I mean, we're seeing women in perimenopause. So just all the chapters that you experience throughout motherhood.
Nicole, do you mind sharing a little bit more about your personal story? It sounds like maybe there was more there than often spoken about. And when we talk about, I was pregnant, I had a baby, I came home, and I was tired, but I got through it. So, do you mind sharing a little bit more?
I have two daughters. Evelyn is 5, Loretta is 2. And I really struggled with mental health. I really struggled with depression throughout the perinatal periods with all 3 of my pregnancies. My 5-year-old, so this started 6 years ago. I got pregnant with her and really struggled with severe prenatal depression. It was really dark. It started around 15 weeks pregnant. And there was a point where I would try and talk to friends and say, like, I just can't handle this emotionally. I don't know, like, am I broken? I don't like being pregnant. And I love my baby so much, but this is not for me. And I just kept hearing, like, you should be happy. You're pregnant. And you have a healthy pregnancy and you're fine. Your baby's fine. So, like, what's the issue? So I internalized it and really struggled through it, and then gave birth and just loved motherhood. It was like a light switch. That depression just cleared. And sleep deprivation seems to be a big trigger for me with depression. And I had really severe prenatal insomnia. I cannot sleep when I'm pregnant. And so that seemed to be my trigger. So I know some people say, like, it's the pregnancy exhaustion versus the postpartum exhaustion, which is worse. For me, it was pregnancy exhaustion. I was so tired. And then 2 years later, I got pregnant with my second pregnancy and struggled. It was a surprise pregnancy, and I was not prepared mentally to walk through that darkness again. And so I think there was this guilt that followed because I ended up losing that pregnancy. And I questioned, was I to blame? Like, was my lack of excitement in this pregnancy because of my fear of depression? Is that what's to blame here? I mean, I think that so often as mothers, we just question these moments, right? We question if we are the reason. And that's never the case, but it's so easy for us to carry that guilt. So I got pregnant again 6 months later. And I think pregnancy after loss really just changes your outlook on everything. So I was able to walk through that pregnancy and really find joy in it. Did not struggle as severely with insomnia, which was lovely. So that probably helped the situation, but it was a joy to be in that pregnancy and really relish and appreciate a healthy pregnancy that round. So gave birth to my daughter. As you said, I am a CEO. I have always worked in kind of the small business startup industry. And so I didn't have maternity leave. And that was really tough. I took 3 weeks vacation after the birth of my second daughter. And I went back to work full time at 3 weeks. And I think anyone listening, right? Everyone knows that the maternal leave in the United States, it leaves a lot to be desired. And it was really unfortunate. I was thrown into a really hectic, season at work. It was end of the year for us, and I felt like I was drowning. My daughter was not sleeping. She was pretty sickly. So dealing with a lot of doctor's appointments and trying to juggle full time. And still had a toddler too. So I was also trying to be a mom and show up mentally and emotionally for my daughter, who just had a newborn brought into her life. And so I almost immediately fell into postpartum depression, and could not climb out of it. Looked everywhere for a virtual perinatal mental health certified therapist in the Atlanta area or in Georgia, and could not find anyone. And I gave up. I gave up on the search because I was too busy to find something. And that's where Maire began.
How did you find comfort, solace in those weeks and months where you recognized you knew what was going on, you were feeling depressed, but you also had to get back to work? How did you navigate that such a deep and dark time?
Not well. And I think that that's why we are so passionate about access to quality perinatal mental health certified providers. I walked through it alone. I remember going to my OB and saying, "Hey, I see it. I recognize this. I know that I'm sitting in postpartum depression. What do I do? Where do I go?" And her response was, "I'm so sorry. I can't help you. I don't have anyone to refer you to. I can give you a medication, but that's really my only option to help you." And so I felt this gap. And that was my first experience with the healthcare system gap of, if you can't help me, who is? Who's going to help? And so I did. I walked through it alone. I didn't navigate it well. I sat in postpartum depression for 14 months.
For women that are listening, it sounds like you knew you were depressed, maybe even because you had experienced it before. And I think that women and moms, especially early in motherhood, you question what you're feeling. Am I just tired? Am I just hungry? Or am I depressed? What should a mom be looking for that goes from no, you had a bad night's sleep to no, there's actually something here that's very deep rooted that you need to assess and you need to get help immediately?
Yeah, great question. So clinically, what we're looking for in a woman who would be diagnosed with a PMAD, and a PMAD stands for a perinatal mood or anxiety disorder. We're looking for over 2 weeks of clinical symptoms, including inability to sleep, feeling unconnected to your newborn, feeling hopeless and lost, feeling that sense of hopelessness, and really just feeling like nothing's ever going to get better. So if you are feeling this sense of dread every day of, I can't do this, and I don't know how I'm going to keep going, that is where you've turned from. We hear baby blues postpartum, and the baby blues are common. Yes, they last about 2 weeks, and then it clears, and you are feeling great, and you're feeling confident. We see postpartum depression kick in, and those symptoms are lasting we see postpartum last over a year. I'm an example of that. So that's when we know, hey, this is when you need to reach out to a therapist, and check in and see if there's a way that you could get support.
Do you have either anecdotally or really in any research that indicates whether or not depression, either perinatal or postpartum, is that going up? Is it the same and it's just diagnosed more? Like, what are you seeing? Because I think social media sometimes can really cloud my judgment on, like, oh, this is a bigger problem now than it was, years ago, or when my mom was having babies. And I don't know if it's just because people are showing more and talking about it more, or if life is actually, something's happening in moms and mothers' lives today where no, that people are more depressed in this phase of life. Do you have a perspective on this?
I think what we're seeing is awareness. I think that our parents' generation was experiencing very similar situations, but it wasn't talked about. I feel like our generation is the first generation who's really honed in on mental health and cared about it and said, hey, it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to get help to fix that. Right now, 80% of women experience postpartum baby blues. 80%. That is a massive number. But 1 in 5 women are experiencing a perinatal mood and anxiety disorder. 1 in 5. That is wild. That's a really large number. So I do think that it's more awareness. I think this has been going on for a long, long time. Now, you could also argue the fact that we are also sitting in a generation where we have a lot more working moms with a lot more responsibilities on our shoulders. We are holding a lot. So I'd be interested to see more research there because not much exists.
Well, and what you explained is something that I think more and more moms feel, as particularly working moms, is you have a baby. In your case, you had a very short maternity leave. 3 weeks is, I mean, insanely short. But let's say a typical or a healthier maternity leave of 12 weeks, maybe even 16 weeks, right, which would be amazing. And that's great. But then you're asked to work and kind of to immediately go from this, working at 0% to working at 100% while balancing everything else at home. It's very, very challenging. And I think moms do have this identity crisis because you either have gone from not being a mom to being a mom and now a working mom or you've added a new child to your family. And that means now the pressure to provide has gone up because the cost of having babies is so expensive. And so I think what's so brilliant about what you're building is that it meets modern moms where they are. And that virtual component, I mean, as someone who's worked throughout motherhood, I can tell you that the inconvenience of having to go into an office is real. And so by allowing moms to say, no, you can take this from your home office, or you can take a lunch break and take this from your lunch, it really just provides more choices to moms that already feel so limited with time and energy.
Absolutely. I mean, the load that we carry as working moms in particular is heavy. And the last thing we want to do is put ourselves first, right? So if there is an inconvenience or if there is a schedule conflict, we're not going to choose us over our kids or our families or our work schedules. We are going to put ourselves at the very bottom of that totem pole. And I think that that's what allows this virtual kind of aspect of what we do to step in and fill that gap.
Well, and the other thing I think is important to say is even if you're not a working mom, if you've added to your family, especially, you know how difficult it is to balance the schedule of a toddler with the schedule of a newborn. And so the virtual component comes into play even for the mom that may not work outside the home because you're simply the one holding down the fort. And I think what's so interesting about pregnancies is that every pregnancy can look different. So this can catch a mom off guard. You could have had 2, maybe even 3 babies and never once experience anything that you're talking about here, either perinatal or postpartum. And then suddenly it happens and it catches you off guard. And now you don't know what to do. And what you're doing, which is just so smart again, is providing access to moms in a way that's more accessible. I'd love for you to share a little bit more about how moms that are listening can get ahead of this because, there's so much enthusiasm about finding out that you're pregnant. And like any first-time pregnancy, you'll quickly learn that there's a lot of things you didn't realize. So what's your piece of advice for maybe they just found out they're pregnant? What should they do now? How are they best set up for success once you get that positive result?
Preventative care. This is something I'm so passionate about, and our team is so passionate about. We actually have preventative care wellness packages that we even offer at Maire. But even if you're not living in a state in which Maire is available, find your village, find your army, do the research. Right now, I think it's important to focus on pelvic floor therapy. If you're pregnant, you should have a pelvic floor therapist that you're working with to get educated. Prepare your core. If you already know you're going to have a C-section, you need to be working on that core. There are so many exercises that you can be doing to prepare yourself for delivery. I think so many women hear pelvic floor and they think, well, I'm a C-section mom. That doesn't apply to me. That's not true. Every single woman needs pelvic floor therapy. It is crucial. That's a big one. Another one is ACOG put out an article in 2018. So this is a while ago. And they said that by 3 weeks postpartum, a mom should be receiving their first in-person appointment with their OB. At 12 weeks postpartum, they think that every mom should have a full comprehensive panel that's going over mental health and their hormones and breastfeeding questions. Well, that doesn't exist, right? Because insurance isn't paying for it. And that's why it doesn't exist in our system. So if you are pregnant, having an established relationship where you know that your OB is going to be willing to dig in from a blood panel standpoint, because not every OB is willing to sign that paperwork for a blood panel. Our functional medicine, our maternal functional medicine, we are looking at, a comprehensive metabolic panel. We're looking at CBC. We're looking at ferritin. We're looking at prolactin, which plays a huge role in breastfeeding. There are certain labs that we do in our preventative wellness appointments to set yourself up as here's our base, so that when you're postpartum and you're coming back to us for labs, we immediately know, okay, what's off? What do we need to do? What do we need to put into place to make you the best version of you while you're walking through this major milestone? And then mental health. I mean, that's probably one of the biggest pieces. If you can imagine being pregnant and you have so many questions, you have no idea what's in front of you if it's your first, right? And even if it's your second or your third, like you said, every pregnancy and every birth and every child is different. So to be able to sit down with a mental health specialist and say, okay, what do I need to be prepared for? And to have the education and that professional voice, that expert saying, hey, this is what you need to be looking out for. These are going to be your red flags. Here's what you should know about being postpartum and being pregnant. I think there's a lot of power in that kind of care.
I think the way you framed it is super important. It's like, well, why would you do the preventative? It's like, because you need to establish a baseline. Everyone talks about how your hormones go haywire after you've had the baby. And if you actually understand like how your body is operating at like throughout pregnancy, you're going to set yourself up for success later on when you're trying to figure out, instead of guessing what medication or what therapist, it might be something as simple as adding a vitamin because you're just prone to certain deficiencies or you're overproducing something. But you don't know that unless you establish that baseline early. And to your point, I think the hardest part is that when you find out you're pregnant, you're so excited. And the focus is what? The focus is the baby, the baby, the baby, the baby. And I think we're just now seeing the shift, this very positive shift towards, well, what are we doing to care for mom? And this is one of these measures that you can do to ensure that mom is in a healthy, happy state when the baby comes. Look, it doesn't mean it's not going to be hard. It doesn't mean you're not going to experience baby blues. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have, a challenging recovery. It just means that some of those edge cases that you hear about, some of the trauma that you hear about, that you can reduce that risk by being a little bit more intentional on the front end and making sure you're taking care of you. And as a mom of 3 young children, I can tell you, it is really hard to prioritize yourself and your own health when you're pregnant. Because if your doctor's saying everything's fine, you don't want to do another appointment. You don't want to spend more money. And being able to get ahead of it before it becomes a problem is incredibly meaningful, because you're going to end up spending more time and more energy trying to fix something that you may or may not know is something going on inside of you.
Yes, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, we wouldn't wait until we're in labor to pack a hospital bag. why do we as women wait until we're in a crisis to establish a relationship with a healthcare provider? There's incredible ways to set yourself up for success, because if the crisis does come, if we can't prevent the challenge from arising, because things are going to happen, you immediately have that relationship in place. You know who to go to, and you know that it's going to get fixed and fixed quickly, because you're in the middle of a crisis. The last thing you want to do is be researching and trying to find who you're going to go to next.
Nicole, you talked a little bit earlier about, your village of supporters, and obviously that's like something tried and true to my heart. But, when you were going through both kind of seasons of depression and these very difficult seasons, what were some of the things that your friends and family members could do for you? What were the things that were meaningful to you, that gave you hope, that showed you the light, that ultimately allowed you to pull through both seasons?
I remember one particular day, which again, insomnia seems to be my trigger for depression. My daughter didn't sleep through the night until 14 months, my second daughter. And so that was a long season of not a lot of sleep, which again, just kind of it pushes you darker into that hole. One of the kindest things that I had a friend do for me was take the kids so I could sleep. And that seems like such a small act, but my goodness, when you're in the thick of it, just going to your friends and saying, hey, can I take the kids to the park so you can get a nap for an hour and a half? That's everything. It makes me teary to think about it, but it's so rare that we think to show up in such a simple way like that. But yeah, that was a really big one.
I love that example. I always joke with people that, what are you guaranteed when you have a baby? You're guaranteed unsolicited advice in a onesie. What moms really crave is what you're talking about. It's like the smallest gesture that actually gives you a little bit of life, especially when it's sleep related. I dream of a world where instead of people rushing over to your house to deliver a meal and to bring over gifts for the baby, instead what we're doing is we're signing up to do little things around the house for the first couple of months. I'm talking 3 to 4, maybe a half a dozen friends that just rotate, doing the laundry or tidying up the house or just being on with the baby so that mom can actually sleep, right?
Yeah.
Because the mom doesn't sleep when the baby sleeps, and we all know that. And it's the worst advice that no one's taking that advice. It's not good advice.
No.
I agree with you. I think we're a generation of moms that are thinking differently, and we're prioritizing things differently. And so we have the knowledge and the awareness of what certain problems are. And now we have tools that can allow us to assemble in a way that allows us to be more productive and effective at helping our friends through these difficult seasons. And by the way, even if you're not depressed, maybe even if you have a perfectly healthy, happy baby, that doesn't mean you don't need support. And I think that we as moms, we try so hard to put on this Wonder Woman, this Superwoman cape that we're great and we're fine and we're good and we can do it without everyone because everyone else is. And the reality is, if we could just let our guard down a little bit and allow people to help us, starting with yourself, acknowledging that I'm going to help myself first, but also allowing my village of supporters to help us. What a healthier, happier way of starting your relationship with your child and becoming a mom or adding to your family, because it's all there in front of us. We just have to be willing to accept that maybe, just maybe, I don't have it all figured out just by being me.
Yeah, you're so right. I completely agree.
I mean, I know you and I see the world so similarly in this way. It's a really exciting time to be building technology in this space, because gone are the days where we don't talk about depression. Gone are the days where we don't talk about infertility. Gone are the days where we don't talk about miscarriage. These things are being talked about, which is great. That is step one. Step two is, what do we do about it? And then there's some subtle culture shifts that have to happen where people now realize, no, this is just what we do. We take our preventative care seriously. We allow our supporters to help us. We then share these great resources with friends that are pregnant or expecting or trying, so that they too can be set up for success. Because ultimately, this chapter, everyone talks about this early chapter of motherhood being so precious. And then we feel guilt if it doesn't feel that way. And there is a way, I genuinely believe this, there is a way for moms to feel a more confident in this season of life. But you have to embrace the resources around you. So I really applaud you for everything that you're doing at Maire. And I'm just so excited about the opportunities and the potential to continue to partner alongside of you on these things, because it's important. And it will just make all of these chapters more positive and inspiring for everyone.
Thank you. I appreciate it, but also same to you, because what you're building is truly incredible. We all need support and we all need a village.
Well, Nicole, as we part here, I'd love for you to share a little bit more about where people can find you, and then we'll wrap up.
So we're all on Instagram. Our Instagram is maire_for every chapter. You can see our providers' faces because they are real. They're real women. They're real moms, and they are in it every day, just like we are. I think the virtual aspect sometimes can feel a little different, but they are showing up to the table as real as they can be. And our website is the same, so maire-foreverychapter.com. I'm sure we can tag it, but that will run you through everything: who we are, what we do, why we believe in this. You're going to see a very real and raw team when you come to our platforms. And we believe in being authentic, because that's the kind of healthcare we need.
I love it, Nicole. Well, thank you again for joining us today. We'll absolutely be sure to tag all of your handles, the website. I encourage everyone to check it out, and certainly more to come. Keep on keeping on and just doing the great work that you're doing. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Jordan.